there are some terrible people being met with awful news themselves, and that includes those in the Trump administration, specifically J.D. Vance, who got what I might consider almost career-ending news from Donald Trump today with a new announcement that has thrown him under the bus in the most delicious way. So if you have been upset with how bad the news has been, be excited because JD just got some himself.
Looks like Trump just made a jaw-dropping power move, and it involves throwing his most loyal ally, J.D. Vance, straight under the bus. Yep, you heard that right. In a twist no one saw coming, Trump has left Vance out in the cold, and it's raising some serious questions about what loyalty really means in Trump's world. Is this the start of a downfall for Vance's political journey, or just another wild episode in the never-ending spectacle that is Trump's political career? One thing's for sure, buckle up, because things are about to get very interesting.
According to new reports, the Trump administration is considering forming a task force to look into the potential impact of the tariffs that they have put on China and, of course, the tariffs that China has put on us. In other words, Donald Trump wants to make sure that any of the ramifications of his trade war fall on somebody else. And that somebody else, according to these reports, is going to be J.D. Vance.
But before we dive deeper, go ahead and smash that like button and hit subscribe, because trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Donald Trump, ever the unapologetic savage, is basically rewriting the manual on political betrayal. And who's left standing there, arms flailing like a confused extra in a Tarantino movie? Yep, J.D. Vance. That's right, the same J.D. Vance who once blasted Trump with the fury of 1,000 suns, only to somehow end up as his vice presidential pick. Because if there's one thing Trump excels at, it's transforming former critics into die-hard loyalists right before tossing them aside like yesterday's headlines. Of course, it doesn't end there.
We need a little bit of tariff context from two ridiculous things Donald Trump said today.
Mexico, Canada, they live off it, those two. Without us, they wouldn't have a country. And everybody wants a peace. And at a certain point, if we don't make a deal, we'll just set a limit. We'll set a tariff, we'll set some parameters, and we'll say, come in and shop. They may not like that, and they may find it, or the market may find it too high, more likely the market.
And right on cue, here comes Trump, gleefully tossing J.D. Vance into the political meat grinder, with the same kind of flair you'd expect from a dramatic reality show elimination. So how'd he do it? Tariffs. Not just any tariffs either. We're talking about the kind of economic gut punches that could make a grown man weep, shutter businesses, and leave everyday Americans clutching their wallets like it's the Great Depression 2.0. And who, pray tell, is going to take the heat for these chaotic trade policies? You guessed it, J.D. Vance. Poor guy, didn't even see it coming.
A single shipyard in China now produces more ships every year than all of the American shipyards combined. Think of that. And it was a business that we used to dominate. We used to dominate it totally. In short, chronic trade deficits are no longer merely an economic problem. They're a national emergency that threatens our security and our very way of life. It's a very great threat to our country. And for these reasons, starting tomorrow, the United States will implement reciprocal tariffs on other nations.
The Trump administration not only is considering forming this task force, but they are going to, if it comes to fruition, put Vice President J.D. Vance in charge of it and effectively make him what they're calling the tariff czar.
Let's be real for a second. When Trump unveiled his big tariff announcement, he didn't just roll out a shiny new policy. He pulled the pin on a political grenade, tossed it straight at J.D. Vance, and made a beeline for the exit like nothing happened. And the timing? Absolutely brutal. J.D. Vance, in all his political genius, had just finished cozying up to Trump, acting like his past criticism was just a wild phase, a youthful rebellion, nothing serious. A phase he now probably regrets with every fiber of his being, deep in the darkest corners of his soul.
But we will charge them approximately half of what they are and have been charging us. So the tariffs will be Not a full reciprocal. I could have done that, yes, but it would have been tough for a lot of.
But here's the kicker. J.D. Vance has now been handed the thankless job of defending these tariffs like he's some kind of economic messiah. It's like being told to clean up a mess you didn't make and then smile proudly while doing it. These are tariffs practically designed to kneecap the economy, and now JD's the poster boy for the fallout. Good luck explaining that to the voters, JD. You're not just holding the bag, you are the bag.
If you go back a little bit, Lawrence, remember during the first Trump administration, everybody said that Trump's tariffs were going to be inflationary back then. What actually happened? We had 1.5% inflation, we had the fastest growing economy in a generation, and we had the beginning of a manufacturing renaissance in the United States of America. Then, of course, we had 4 terrible years of the Biden administration. But I think it's useful for all of us to step back and ask ourselves, what has the globalist economy gotten the United States of America? And the answer is fundamentally it's based on 2 principles: incurring a huge amount of debt to buy things that other countries make for us. And to make it a little bit more crystal clear, we borrow money from Chinese peasants to buy the things those Chinese peasants manufacture. That is.
You've got to give Trump some credit. The man knows how to turn a disaster into a full-blown circus. And in this circus, there's one headliner, J.D. Vance, front and center, desperately trying to sell a policy that's practically designed to self-destruct. It's a brutal gig. Vance is about to become the punchline on both sides of the aisle. The left will mock him, the right will distance themselves, and Trump? Well, Trump will be off in the wings, shrugging like it was never his idea in the first place. Because if there's one thing Trump has truly mastered, it's the art of turning his loyal followers into scapegoats when the ship starts to sink. Now, let's talk about this tariff mess for a second. The logic behind tariffs has always been shaky at best. Slap a tax on foreign goods to make them pricier, so Americans buy domestic instead. Sounds simple, right? But here's the twist. American manufacturers don't have the capacity to handle all that redirected demand. So what happens next? Prices spike, supply chains strain, and consumers pay the price. And who gets to stand there, watching the economy crack under the pressure, while pretending everything's going according to plan? You guessed it, J.D. Vance. Good luck with that one, buddy.
67%, so we're going to be charging a discounted reciprocal tariff of 34%. I think, in other words, they charge us, we charge them less, so how can anybody be upset? They will be, because we never charge anybody anything, but now we're going to charge. European Union, they're very tough, very, very tough traders. You know, you think of European Union, very friendly. They rip us off. It's so sad to see. It's so pathetic. 39%, we're going to charge them 20%, so we're charging them essentially half. Vietnam, great negotiators, great people. They like me, I like them. The problem is they charge us 90%. We're going to charge them 46%
And you
tariff.
know what's truly hilarious? Trump probably didn't even consider the fallout. He's up in his golden tower, firing off commands like some 19th century monarch, totally detached, totally unconcerned about what happens next. Meanwhile, J.D. Vance is somewhere out there, sweating bullets, trying to defend Trump's latest economic train wreck, while quietly praying it doesn't nuke his entire political future. It's like being handed a live grenade with a smile and a good luck, champ.
When Powell warned that Trump's tariffs could bring inflation down and could bring greater inflation and slow economic growth, he didn't use the exact word, but what he was describing is stagflation. Investopedia defines stagflation as an economic condition characterized by slowing economic growth, high unemployment, and rising prices or inflation simultaneously. It's a 1-2-3 punch, although at least for now we continue to have low unemployment, but inflation and a recession, which then results in higher unemployment, at the same time?
Let's not forget, just a few years ago, J.D. Vance was out here roasting Trump like he was hosting the political version of Comedy Central's most savage roast. The man practically built his brand by dragging Trump's economic policies through the mud, calling them reckless and disastrous. And he didn't stop there. Nope. Vance made sure the world knew he saw Trump as nothing more than a self-absorbed, egomaniacal train wreck who couldn't lead his way out of a paper bag. His insults had so much heat, they could have caused a solar eclipse, and still outshone it. But here's the twist no one saw coming. Instead of standing by those convictions, JD took a hard left, or should we say, a hard right, and hitched a ride on the Trump train all the way to the vice presidency. And now? Well, JD, you're about to find out what happens when you try to pull off a political 180 so dramatic, even Hollywood would reject it as too far-fetched. Because jumping on a sinking ship doesn't make you the captain, it just lands you in first class on the way down. Good luck, buddy. You're gonna need it.
And my biggest problem with Trump, and there are many things to pick out, but my biggest problem with Trump is that his message to the right, especially the white working class of which I came from, is anti-conservative and in some ways anti-American. It's fundamentally that the deck is so stacked against you that unless I'm the president, nothing that you do will change your life's outcomes. I think it's wrong, and I think it's very self-destructive.
It's almost poetic when you think about it. J.D. Vance, the man who built his entire political brand by firing shots at Donald Trump, spent years tearing him down. He wasn't just another Republican with critiques. No, Vance styled himself as the anti-Trump voice within the party. The guy who didn't just challenge Trump's policies, he mocked the man's entire existence, painting him as the walking, talking symptom of everything wrong with modern conservatism. But surprise, surprise, when the Trump machine came knocking, Vance didn't hesitate. He didn't walk, he leapt into line. Not just rolling over, but fully embracing the role of political puppet with open arms and a polished smile. It's like he looked at the golden ticket to power and thought, principles? Who needs those when there's a seat on the Trump train? And now, here we are. Vance is stuck defending Trump's economic chaos, tariffs that are already setting off alarms across the board, while the very party he once rallied feels more like a collapsing stage under his feet. Call it irony, call it karma, call it political whiplash. Whatever it is, Vance is getting a front row seat to the circus he once swore he'd never join. And honestly, it's hard not to grab some popcorn and enjoy the show.
And so one of the takeaways is not just that the Republican Party base is somehow fundamentally flawed in a way that's unique in American political history. It's that Trump is a really bad candidate and, frankly, I think a really bad person.
I don't know who I'm going to vote for. I'm definitely not going to vote for Trump because I think that he's projecting very complex problems onto simple villains.
Of course, Trump isn't exactly the type to take the fall for anything, especially when his policies crash and burn in spectacular fashion. Nah, he's going to kick back, enjoy the show, and let J.D. Vance bear the brunt of the fallout from these disastrous tariffs, like some poor schmuck stuck cleaning up the mess after a party they didn't even get invited to. And here's the thing about Trump. The man has an almost magical ability to stir up total chaos, then just sit back with a grin and let someone else scramble to fix it. The tariffs are tanking the economy, but guess who's going to be left holding the bag, trying to explain why everything's going sideways? If Vance thought hitching his wagon to Trump's train would be his ticket to political glory, he's about to find out the hard way. It's actually a one-way ticket to an unholy mess.
Because it just displays the incompetence and corruption that is at play here. Now, we know the corruption. We're actually going to talk with one of the best Democrats in Congress about that later in this video, so please stick around for that. But the incompetence is clear. Donald Trump doesn't know what the end goal of his tariff plan is. He doesn't know if it's bringing manufacturing back, which isn't going to happen because he lost manufacturing jobs in his first administration. It's not certainly to bring...
The fact that Trump threw Vance under the bus with these tariffs, it's almost too perfect. It's the ultimate "I told you so" moment. Vance spent so much time pretending he wasn't part of the Trump circus, acting like he wasn't caught up in the madness. But now, he's right there, smack in the middle of it all, trying to juggle flaming swords that weren't even his idea in the first place. And let's be real, he's terrible at it. Do you honestly think J.D. Vance has a clue how to handle tariffs? Please. The guy couldn't even deal with the fact that his so-called hero, Trump, turned on him so fast that Vance was left gasping for air. The only thing Vance is good at is parroting Trump's talking points like a well-trained bird. Trump's entire strategy? Playing pretend. Pretending tariffs are going to magically fix the trade deficit while the rest of the world watches in horror. It's as if his economic plans are drawn up by someone who's never even glanced at an economics book. And now, JD Vance is the one tasked with convincing everyone that this dumpster fire of a plan is somehow the future of America. Good luck with that, JD. You're gonna need it.
For 40 years, we have gone down that pathway. We've seen closing factories, we've seen rising inflation, we've seen the cost of housing so high that most Americans can't afford to buy a home right now. President Trump is taking this economy in a different direction. He ran on that, he promised it, and now he's delivering. And yes, this is a big change. I'm not going to shy away from it, but we needed a big change, Lawrence. We cannot keep going down the Joe Biden globalist pathway where we have $2 trillion of peacetime debt and deficits. We have manufacturing disappearing. That is not working for Americans. We've got to take this country in a different direction.
But it's not just the tariffs. Oh no, this is part of a much bigger, much funny picture. JD Vance, once hailed as the proud, independent voice of the GOP, has now been reduced to Trump's personal punching bag. This is the same JD Vance who wrote a book about escaping the suffocating grip of his small-town Ohio roots and finding a higher purpose, only to end up groveling for political scraps under the golden thumb of Trump. Now, he's out there desperately trying to make sense of a policy that's as coherent as a raccoon in a tuxedo. And let's face it, he's about as good at selling failure as a used car dealer with a personality disorder. The irony here is so rich, it could be bottled and sold as gourmet sarcasm. The guy's been shoved into the most absurd position possible, attempting to sell a strategy that's doomed to fail, all while looking completely clueless doing it.
There was a lot of criticism from Denmark, a lot of attacks at the Trump administration, at the president, at me, at others in our administration for saying the obvious, which is that Denmark hasn't done a good job at keeping Greenland safe.
The irony here is off the charts. JD Vance spent years tearing into Trump, distancing himself from the man's lunatic policies and even crazier public rants. But as soon as the chance to cash in on Trump's brand came knocking, Vance was all in, ready to sell his soul for a shot at power. Now, as Trump's disastrous tariff policies start to crumble, Vance is stuck cleaning up a mess that was never his to begin with. If there's one thing JD Vance should have learned by now, it's that karma has a way of kicking you right in the arse when you least expect it. You suck up to Trump, play the game, and when it all blows up in your face, guess what? You get to wear the consequences. Vance's political career just got hit with the ultimate bait and switch. Now he's right in the middle of a disaster, trying to convince America that he's the hero. Spoiler alert, he's not. He's the fall guy.
Now, here's the thing. Donald Trump's trade war, his tariff policy, all of that is hugely unpopular with the American public, including with Republicans. Everybody hates it. So, Trump knows that. He pays very close attention to the polls. We see him whine about them all the time. So he has decided, like, okay, listen, this really isn't about China. This isn't about the possible supply chain impacts, which is what they're trying to sell it as. This is really a way to pass the buck. This is me saying, okay, JD, you're the guy. You're the tariff czar. There you go, buddy. Go tell the people why everything's more expensive now. Tariff czar. That's you. You're the guy. You go.
Yeah, Trump just threw JD Vance under the bus. But let's be real here. Vance was never really on the bus in the first place. He was just the guy holding the wheel, pretending he was in charge, while Trump took control and drove the whole thing straight into a ditch. Classic Trump move. Make you think you're in the driver's seat, and then yank the rug out from under you when the whole thing inevitably goes up in flames. Vance may have thought he was getting a free ride to power, but instead, he got a front row seat to the circus that is Trump's political theater. The best part? Vance probably convinced himself he was the co-star, only to find out he was just an extra in the background, a pawn in Trump's twisted game. And now, JD Vance is left holding the bag of whatever crumbs Trump decided to toss his way. Trump's abandonment? It's as predictable as a bad reality show finale. The plot twist no one saw coming, but everyone should have. Enjoy the ride, buddy. It's about to get a whole lot worse. Buckle up, because Vance is about to learn that with Trump, you're never the hero of the story. You're just another chapter in a never-ending train wreck.